First off, what they teach you as a storyteller or writer is for a narrative, one scene should have a forward momentum. You go from point A to point B. But what I love about your film is the fact that every scene I wanted to actually stay in. There's a lot of world building within every scene you have in this narrative. Can you tell me how much work does that take? Because you're not following a planned formula, and that's what I really appreciated about your film.
Obviously, there's an overall structure of how the different scenes fit together and how they push each other. We have basically two overall layers. We have the present day and the struggle and the love that our main character Maggie's put in, that she has to sort of eventually to choose between personal life or the professional life, and then the backstory and the sort of puzzle of what came about for her to have this choice in her life. But the overall work on the script, just I'm glad you feel that it has these possibilities, or what you would call it, that it has this kind of richness to it, because I mean we wrote on the script for a long time, so it's changed over time. It's changed in the sense of what we wanted it to really the story we wanted to tell, the situation between the couple, and the way we layered the restaurant and the food scene into the structure of this and the story itself. That they became more and more involved in the restaurant as the script evolved, and the very idea of food and relationship and how that is sort of a theme through the movie, all something that evolved through the many different scripts. And then I think we're both very classic grained, me and Tobias. I mean, I came from a lot of crime stories that has a very clear structure, and exactly, there's many ways of doing a bad crime story, and it's very difficult to do a good one. But we all know the basic structure of it, and how the linear plot should push different elements, and when you plan your B plot and stuff like that. I wanted to use some of those sort of thriller crime elements in something that was something completely different, which is just an emotional story about a man and a wife. So we wanted to take some of these elements and put into a relationship story.
I loved all of the elements of this movie, but just wondering if you're passionate about editing as well, because I just thought the way the story was edited was fantastic, because I can actually watch this movie again and pick up a completely different theme or different layer. And that's what deep films should be about. Is editing a big part of who you are as an artist as well?
I would definitely say, I mean, in the sense, I like to shoot a lot of, I have two elements when I shoot. I want to have a very interesting look. I want to have the placement of the camera and the colors in the scene to do something visually interesting. And at the same time, I'm very keen on having the actors be naturalistic and great performers, and not be staged and not be theatrical. So I have a style that pulls it in one direction, and I have an interest in character and acting and storytelling that pulls it in a different direction. That balance of that is all fine-tuned in editing, because the material can do so many different things. For this movie, my wife edited it, so we were very close talk about that whole process. And it actually, I don't think I had a movie where we edited that much. I think we worked together on this for 6 months. That was quite long editing period. I mean, some people edited for longer, but I usually edit quite quickly. It was a very long process, which obviously had a lot of these discussions about structure, about layering, about pushing the narrative, and about the theatrical, the stylistic element of it, structure of it. It has chapters in it, all these kind of elements, and then underneath it all, it's a very banal, basic story about a man and a wife.
Yeah, this is also a story about dreams. And wondering,
Yeah.
when you were a young filmmaker, did you believe, regarding your Michelin star, did you believe that you wanted to make the most impactful film ever? And as the years progressed, when did you come to the realization that in life, you can't really, it might be pretty impossible to have 100% become the great artist as well as have a
Yeah.
structured family life?
I had, quite early in my career, I had great success and failure at the same time. So my debut movie came to Cannes, which was for me the only. I'm not an Oscar guy. I'm a Cannes guy. This is the World Championship of movie making. It's it takes place in France. And with my first movie, I came there, I won a prize. So that was absolutely perfect. But that was also quite, it also destroyed in the sense that I had accomplished a very important thing I wanted to accomplish much too early. After that, I've never really, I tried to redefine me in the sense of that kind of success. I never, after that, I never went to any premieres or award shows. I try to leave that behind because the success is something different. The success is in making the movies, is basically what I've found out, that I'm making movies. And that's why if you look at how many movies I make a lot more movies than other directors in Denmark, because that's a success for me of being in the process of doing this. I've tried to leave that the success in the exterior world that a artistic product can give you, awards, money, fame and acclaim, difficult as it might be, and I still need a living. It's the work that I appreciate. And I feel successful if I'm allowed to do to do the work.
I'm going to ask you a question that'll probably take an hour to answer, and I apologize, but I watch a lot of cinema, and I tell people, even with all this great technology and the advent of so many cameras and editing technique, I go back to Fritz Lang's M for just visual and storytelling inspiration. And for you with Carl Dreyer, can you just tell our listeners and viewers why sometimes learning from these masters from maybe 60, 70 years ago can be a real great creative fountain for even today's technology? What is it about their work that still resonates?
I think that the main point you have to that movies is obviously about technique and it's about storytelling, and there's a pacing that in modern days we might not be able to find in the old movies. But movies are also about slices of life. They are a way of looking at life, and they're basically a way of appreciating how to live. They are all trying to gain access of what is it to be human, different genres of different ways of looking at human existence. These old guys were very profound thinkers, but in visual terms of being directors. So they give us slices of life through their cinema. So there's just great knowledge of how they use the lighting and the story and the elements they have. And a guy like Dreyer, he had sort of a monumental way of looking at life and looking at the fragile existence of humanity, and a way of mise-en-scène, and the way he pulled down everything artificial and everything unneeded to create these very clean images about human existence and the fragile of life and stuff like that. So he's not an inspirational in what I do now. I do something completely different, but inspirational in gaining knowledge about cinema and life. He's an absolute master. So he's something that is very close to my heart, Dreyer, and obviously Lars von Trier, who proclaims himself to be in the heritage tradition of, but he himself is very different. But these kind of directors, are just very interesting. Yeah. No, I definitely think, and I think I've also been teaching in film school, and I think one of the things that was a little discouraging in going there was that some reasons film students' knowledge of history starts when, in the 80s, or with the arrival of Steven Spielberg. He's a great director, but he is standing on the shoulders on a long and very artful tradition of masters before him. And I think there's great knowledge to be gained to going back to the old grand masters of cinema and see what they did. And some of them, even by today's standards, are better. I always, when I have students or when I talk to people, go back and look at an old Billy Wilder movie. He's more cutthroat. He's a very better storyteller, and he doesn't miss one beat. Where you would, use 3 punches, he uses 1. There are some of the Billy Wilders. They are razor sharp in how he tells a story that I don't know anybody, maybe besides David Fincher today, that could do the same kind of storytelling.
And as we're leaving, just 30 seconds, if just a cinephile comes up to you and asks that they want to actually see a Dreyer film or a Wilder film, which 2 films would you point them just to start their journey with these respective filmmakers?
Billy Wilder, I would see Sunset Boulevard, and Dreyer, you should see Oval. I don't know what it's called in English, but it's called Oval, the Word. I would translate, but not sure. Or Gertel. Gertel from Dreyer is an amazing, amazing, wonderful movie. It's so strange that I can guarantee you have never seen anything like it and never will.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, and I really loved your film as well.
Thank you.